The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in...
The music had already begun. Hundreds of guests were waiting beneath glittering chandeliers. The royal procession was minutes away, and Prince William appeared ready to lead one of the monarchy's most important evenings. Then he looked toward the private entrance and saw a face that was never supposed to be there. Meghan had arrived. Within moments, William issued an order no one expected: cancel the entire royal gala. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William froze as a security officer crossed the room and placed a live entry screen image before him. The prince studied Meghan's face, pushed his chair backwards, and asked in a voice stripped of warmth, who authorized her admission? Catherine stood beside him, watching him closely. She knew this was not simple surprise. Something older had surfaced, tied to distrust, fractured loyalties, and conversations that had never truly ended. The Royal Unity Gala had been designed to prove that the monarchy could still stand together after months of strain. The event at St. James's Palace, a historic royal residence used for state and family occasions, was meant to reassure diplomats, charity leaders, courtiers, and relatives that stability had returned. William had arrived early with Catherine to review the guest order, prepare greetings, and protect that message. Meghan remained beyond the inner reception corridor as movement stopped. Staff lowered their voices. Doors closed. Guests began receiving abrupt instructions that the evening had been cancelled because of an internal security concern. She stared toward the sealed entrance, stunned that her presence had ended the event before she spoke. Yet the digital system had accepted her credentials. Her name was absent from the official guest list, but a palace authorization linked to a senior royal office had allowed her through the first checkpoint. Catherine asked whether Meghan could be escorted away. William refused. He believed the breach had compromised more than protocol, the formal rules governing royal access and conduct. Someone had bypassed his office, used protected authority, and placed her exactly where her appearance would cause maximum damage. Ending the gala was drastic, but allowing it to continue would mean pretending the intrusion had no deeper purpose. As the ballroom emptied, an aide checked the security log and felt the color drain from his face. The authorization had been activated only 47 minutes earlier. Worse, the approval trail did not lead to an outsider, led toward someone inside the family. The gala had been cancelled because Meghan appeared at the door, but the deeper shock was that someone powerful had deliberately opened it for her. To the departing guests, the cancellation seemed sudden, almost irrational. But William and Meghan were not standing on opposite sides of an ordinary palace doorway. Between them lay years of fractured trust, private accusations, family grief, and conversations that had ended without forgiveness. His decision was made in seconds, yet the emotions behind it had been gathering for years, and Catherine understood exactly why his composure had disappeared. William remained inside the antechamber, listening as footsteps faded beyond the closed doors. The prince carried more than anger. As the future king, he was expected to protect the crown's public credibility, meaning the trust and stability people attached to the monarchy, even when his own family was breaking behind palace walls. Every private dispute that escaped into public view had taught him the same brutal lesson. One uncontrolled conversation could become a national crisis before sunrise. Catherine moved closer and placed her hand over his clenched fist. She felt his tension immediately. "Are you certain?" she asked. William looked toward the corridor, where Meghan had been stopped, and answered without raising his voice. "I am certain she was not invited. I am not certain who brought her here." The words unsettled Catherine more than anger would have. She wanted to protect her husband, yet she could not ignore the possibility that someone had placed both sides exactly where they would cause the greatest damage. Meghan stood with the security commander beyond the inner doors, humiliation burning through her shock. She did not see herself as an intruder. She believed she had returned for a private royal conversation affecting her future, Harry's position, and the children's place within the family. To her, The cancelled gala carried a cruel message. William would rather empty an entire palace than allow her into the same room. The security commander asked for proof of invitation. Meghan unlocked her phone but hesitated before handing it over. She explained that a direct message had promised her a private audience immediately after the gala's opening remarks. Those remarks were the formal welcome delivered at the beginning of the event, setting out its purpose before the guests. Yet when he asked who had sent the message, she refused to give a name. Meghan said only that the wording contained information known by fewer than 5 members of the royal household. William heard the statement moments later and felt the old fear return. Private family discussions had surfaced publicly before, and he believed every unchecked encounter carried the danger of another leak, another accusation, another wound turned into a headline. Catherine watched him order the original message recovered. Neither of them yet understood that one phrase inside it came from a secret conversation held months earlier. To understand why Meghan believed the palace door would open for her, William would have to revisit the private exchange that had made this collision inevitable. The cancellation did not begin at the gala entrance. It began 3 months earlier inside a small library at Windsor, where Meghan met a senior royal representative without William's knowledge. No cameras were present. No official minutes were taken. Yet one promise was made that night. A promise concerning Harry, the children, and Meghan's future access to the family. That private conversation became the trigger everyone would later remember as the point of no return. Meghan had requested clarity after months of silence. She wanted to know whether Harry, their children, and she would be included in future family events connected to the monarchy's new era. The question mattered because exclusion from those gatherings was not merely social. It affected public standing, family contact, and whether the Sussex children would remain connected to royal life beyond their titles. Camilla arranged the Windsor meeting without a formal agenda. The Queen Consort believed an informal conversation might prevent another public rupture and restore limited contact before resentment hardened permanently. A royal representative, in this case, meant a senior family member speaking with perceived authority, even without an official written mandate. That distinction would soon become devastating. Meghan placed her phone face down on the table and asked the question she had carried into the room. "Has William agreed?" Camilla paused, adjusted a ring, and chose words that sounded far more certain than they truly were. "He does not need every detail before the family begins healing." The silence that followed changed everything. Camilla then told her, "Come to the Unity Gala, and the family will have to face the matter together." The Royal Unity Gala was meant to present stability and reconciliation before senior guests, making the invitation sound like an opening into the family's future, not a private suggestion without approval. Meghan left Windsor convinced she had received a genuine path back inside. She believed attendance would force an honest conversation about Harry, the children, and her place within the family. Camilla told herself that proximity might succeed where formal discussions had failed. Neither woman accepted how dangerous that assumption was. William learned later that private conversations about his brother's family had taken place without him. The prince felt his future authority being weakened before it had fully begun. Worse, no official gala invitation was ever issued. Someone preserved the promise, copied its language, and eventually converted it into a valid digital entry authorization. Catherine discovered the final betrayal while reviewing a documented account of the Windsor meeting. Camilla had never told Charles the exact words she used. Even the king did not understand how firmly Meghan had been led to expect admission. When William demanded answers after cancelling the gala, Camilla agreed to face him. Meghan refused to remain outside. The hidden promise had finally reached the person it was concealed from, and William was about to confront both the woman who made it and the woman who believed it. The gala guests were still leaving when William entered the private council room. Camilla was already there. Meghan arrived moments later under escort, refusing to depart until someone explained why a royal promise had turned into a public rejection. For the first time, all three faced the consequences in the same room. There were no cameras, no speeches, and no ceremonial smiles. Only anger, wounded pride, and one question: Who had crossed the line? William did not sit. The prince placed the recovered authorization printout on the table and pushed it toward Camilla. Outside, staff were guiding hundreds of confused guests away, while communications officers fought to keep the cancellation from reaching the press. The private council room, a secure chamber used for sensitive royal discussions, had become the center of a crisis that could no longer be hidden. "Did you invite her?" William asked. Camilla looked at the document, then at Meghan. "I offered a conversation," she replied. "I did not give anyone permission to bypass you." The queen consort heard the weakness in her own defense. She had tried to force reconciliation because every formal attempt had failed, but her private promise had placed two wounded people into direct conflict. Meghan stepped forward before William could respond. She accused him of punishing her in front of the entire palace for accepting what she believed was an invitation made in good faith. She reminded him that the message had referred to Harry, the children, and the Windsor conversation, details no outsider should have known. William's anger sharpened. He told her she had entered a restricted royal event without confirming admission through his office. The future king had spent years watching private family words become public weapons, and her sudden appearance reopened every fear he carried about trust, control, and boundaries. "You did not ask me," he said. "You arrived expecting the door to open." Meghan held his gaze, because someone promised it would. Camilla lowered her eyes. Regret finally broke through her composure. Her attempt to create peace had not healed the family. It had given someone else the perfect opening to manipulate them. The security report changed the room. The authorization had not been activated from Camilla's office. Someone had accessed dormant approval credentials, unused digital permission linked to her former staff, and used them to validate Meghan's entry. Meghan then disclosed the final message from her phone. It had not come from Camilla. It came from a private number using words Harry had once used in a recorded family conversation. William immediately ordered palace security to trace it. Camilla warned him quietly that exposing the sender might wound someone far closer to him than Meghan. The confrontation had revealed a reckless promise, but the cancellation now rested on a darker question. Who had turned that promise into a trap? William may have spoken the words that ended the gala, but his decision was shaped by forces operating long before Meghan reached the entrance. Security protocols, private offices, inherited rivalries, and competing visions for the monarchy all converged in a single command. As investigators followed the digital trail, the future king faced an unsettling possibility. The crisis had not been created to help Meghan enter. It had been designed to test whether William could be provoked. William carried operational authority over the Royal Unity Gala because the event belonged to his charitable program and future leadership platform. Operational authority meant he controlled the practical decisions surrounding security, guests, timing, and public responsibility. That power gave the prince the right to cancel the evening, but it also placed the full weight of the consequences on him. Protecting hundreds of guests from an uncontrolled confrontation was defensible. Destroying a major royal event because of personal pain was far harder to explain. Charles read the cancellation order alone in a nearby chamber. The king removed his glasses, lowered the document, and said nothing. He wanted to defend his son, especially if the breach had been deliberately engineered, yet he could not ignore the scale of William's response. The gala carried national attention, charitable funding, and diplomatic meaning. One command had turned a family fracture into an institutional crisis. William felt the pressure closing around him. Someone had challenged his authority at the most visible moment possible, using Meghan's arrival to force a choice between compromise and public control. To the future king, quietly removing her would have looked like surrender. Yet Charles feared that old pain involving Harry and Meghan had shaped the decision more than royal duty. The monarch knew that resentment could make even a justified action appear deeply personal. Catherine joined William as palace security delivered the first access report. He read each line, stopped at one timestamp, and circled it with a pen. The message containing Meghan's arrival time had been sent while they were traveling to the gala. Someone inside the palace had known their exact movements, and understood there would be no chance for a calm discussion before she appeared. The investigation then traced the false authorization to an encrypted device assigned to a retired palace communications advisor. The device had once been used to coordinate between both royal households, giving its owner knowledge of private language, old access routes, and family tensions. But the advisor had not acted alone. Access logs showed that someone inside St. James's Palace had supplied the precise entry point and arrival time. William stared at the report, realizing the trap had required an active palace accomplice. Before security could question that person, Catherine's phone lit up. A photograph of Meghan at the restricted entrance had already reached the media. Someone had wanted the palace divided behind closed doors, but with one leaked image, the humiliation was about to escape into the world. By midnight, the chandeliers had been extinguished, the tables remained untouched, and the gala program lay abandoned on hundreds of empty chairs. Yet the most painful consequences were unfolding away from the ballroom. Meghan felt publicly rejected. William felt deliberately cornered. Camilla faced blame for a promise she could no longer control. And Charles understood that the monarchy had not merely cancelled an event, it had displayed its deepest fracture before the entire world. Meghan sat in the rear of a waiting vehicle, removed one earring with trembling fingers, and stared ahead without speaking. An aide beside her tried to explain that the palace had issued a formal notice, citing an internal security concern. That phrase meant a threat or breach, serious enough to disrupt normal royal activity, but the explanation had already collapsed. The leaked photograph showed her at the entrance, making every neutral statement sound like concealment. "He wanted everyone to know I was the reason," she said. William watched footage of departing guests from a private room. The prince began recognizing charity leaders, major donors, and young beneficiaries who had traveled for an evening built around hope. Their presence mattered because the gala was not simply a family display. It supported programs tied to his public work and his future leadership. Every empty chair now carried a human cost, and the success he had planned had become suffering he could no longer ignore. Catherine stood beside him and asked the question no one else dared to voice. Had canceling the gala protected the crown, or had it allowed an unseen manipulator to control his response? William did not answer immediately. He had believed ending the event proved strength, yet the future king now saw how perfectly his anger had completed someone else's design. Camilla remained alone in the council room after the last voices disappeared. The queen consort stared at the chair Meghan had occupied and finally admitted, in a recorded internal account requested by Charles, that her secret intervention had created the conditions for disaster. She had tried to force reconciliation. Instead, she had placed William and Meghan where their deepest wounds could be used against them. Charles received the next security update in silence. The king learned that the leaked photograph had been transmitted from inside the palace security network 6 minutes before guests were told of the cancellation. The suspected source was an aide recently denied promotion by William's office. That detail shifted the motive from family healing to revenge. Palace staff divided quickly. Some believed William had defended the institution. Others believed he had handed Meghan an unnecessary moral victory by making her rejection public. William refused to order an immediate arrest or dismissal. Instead, he sent Meghan one message: "Meet me tomorrow morning, alone. No advisors, no lawyers, no family." The public rupture could no longer be undone, but one unguarded conversation still had the power to decide whether the night ended in permanent exile or unexpected truth. The following morning, William entered a small sitting room expecting another battle. Meghan was already waiting. No aides stood behind them. No lawyers prepared statements. No senior royals were present to interrupt, soften, or reinterpret their words. For the first time since the gala collapsed, they were not speaking as rival public figures. They were speaking as two people connected by the same fractured family, and both knew the next few minutes would decide everything. William closed the door himself, removed both phones from the table, and placed them inside a drawer. The prince wanted no recording, no sudden message, and no outside voice shaping what came next. "Nothing leaves this room unless we both agree," he said. The private meeting mattered because he still did not know whether Meghan had knowingly crossed a royal boundary or had been manipulated by the same person who leaked her arrival. Meghan accepted the condition. She had agreed to come because she wanted William to acknowledge that Camilla's Windsor promise gave her a real reason to believe the family expected her. A royal boundary meant the formal limits controlling access, information, and conduct around the monarchy. She admitted she should have demanded written confirmation, but years of exclusion had made the possibility of an honest opening too powerful to reject. William listened without interrupting. Then the future king confessed something he had not admitted the night before. Seeing her face at the entrance had brought back every private conversation that later became a headline, every family argument stripped of context, and every fear that trust would be used against him. He had acted from responsibility, but also from fear. That truth settled heavily between them. Meghan unlocked her phone and showed him the final message. William read it twice. One line stopped him. "The family must be made to face itself." The prince recognized the phrase from a documented internal dispute involving the aide who had been denied promotion. It had been used before as a warning, almost a threat, during arguments over palace communication strategy. The meaning became clear with brutal speed. Meghan had been chosen because her arrival would provoke the strongest reaction. William had been chosen because his anger would carry institutional power. The sender expected her to appear, expected him to cancel the gala, and expected the monarchy to fracture in public. William's anger faded into quiet shame. By ending the evening exactly as he had, the future king had completed the saboteur's plan. Meghan did not offer forgiveness, and he did not pretend their deeper wounds had vanished. Instead, they agreed on one joint action: expose the manipulation, accept their separate mistakes, and refuse to let anyone turn their pain into a weapon again. They did not leave the room reconciled, but they left with the same purpose, and that fragile agreement was about to reshape the public meaning of the cancelled gala. By morning, Meghan's face at the palace entrance had become the image seen across Britain and beyond. Some viewed her as an intruder. Others saw a woman deliberately humiliated by the institution she once served. William was condemned as either decisive or unforgiving. But as crowds gathered and broadcasters repeated the same dramatic footage, a new statement emerged, one carrying both their names and destroying the simple story the world thought it understood. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered beneath steady rain, while a broadcaster raised the morning edition of the Daily Chronicle. Its front page carried 4 words, in enormous type: "The face that ended the gala." The palace had become the focus of a national argument. Supporters praised William for defending royal boundaries. Critics accused him of turning a private grievance into public humiliation and wasting an event built around charitable work. Inside the royal communications offices, the pressure became unbearable. A communications team is the group responsible for shaping official statements and protecting the institution's public message. Every office feared being blamed. Camilla's for the original promise, William's for the cancellation, and the security staff for allowing Meghan through the first checkpoint. The simple story of a clash between 2 bitter relatives spread faster than the truth about the false authorization. Catherine watched the crowd coverage without speaking. The princess understood that the charities had already paid the highest price. Their guests had traveled, donors had committed support, and young beneficiaries had expected recognition. Before any defensive statement was released, she asked that each affected organization receive a personal call and a direct apology. William agreed, and her quiet demand pulled the response away from pride and back toward responsibility. The joint declaration arrived shortly afterward. William and Meghan confirmed in a written palace statement that she had been misled by an unauthorized message and that the event had been disrupted through a deliberate internal breach. They did not pretend friendship had returned. Instead, the prince acknowledged that he reacted before the full facts were known, while she admitted she should have confirmed the invitation through official channels. Palace security then identified the aide who supplied Meghan's arrival time and restricted entry point. The employee was dismissed after the access records were verified. In a recorded interview with investigators, The retired communications advisor admitted activating the false authorization, claiming he wanted to expose how easily personal wounds could overpower royal judgment. Meghan did not demand that the gala be restored, and William did not withdraw the cancellation. Both accepted that manipulation had succeeded because neither paused long enough to challenge what they feared. The world finally knew how the trap had been constructed, but only William could decide whether its lasting legacy would be punishment, humility, or change. The Royal Unity Gala never took place. Its tables remained empty, its speeches were never delivered, and its promise of family stability collapsed before the first formal greeting. Yet the cancelled evening achieved something no carefully managed ceremony could have produced. It forced William, Meghan, Camilla, Charles, and Catherine to confront the cost of secrecy, assumption, and unresolved pain. The monarchy survived the scandal, but it could no longer pretend silence was the same as control. William returned to the empty ballroom before staff began dismantling the event. The prince lifted one abandoned gala program from a chair and held it for several seconds. Then he asked that its cover be preserved in the Royal Archive, the official collection where important records and objects from the monarchy's history are kept. He did not want the night remembered as a victory. He wanted it kept as a warning. Charles received his son privately soon afterward. The king listened as William accepted full responsibility for cancelling the gala before the full facts were known. The future king said protecting royal authority also meant admitting when fear and personal pain had shaped a public decision. Charles did not excuse him, but the monarch recognized the importance of that confession. Future kingship, they both understood, could not rest only on control, exclusion, and immediate reaction. It also required discipline over private wounds. Meghan accepted her own failure through the joint written account released after the investigation. She admitted that entering without written confirmation had been a serious mistake, even though Camilla's earlier promise had convinced her that the family expected her. She left without renewed royal status or unrestricted access, but she was publicly cleared of deliberately forcing her way into the gala. Camilla apologized directly to William and Meghan for making a promise she lacked the authority to fulfill. The Queen Consort accepted that good intentions could become dangerous when hidden from those affected. Charles then ordered a new protocol, a clear written process requiring every informal family invitation to be formally confirmed before access was granted. Catherine stood beside William as he signed the document. The princess offered no celebration and no criticism. Her quiet presence carried something stronger, support without pretending the damage had vanished. The disgruntled aide and retired advisor were permanently removed from royal operations. The charities received direct compensation, and the Grand Gala was replaced by smaller events without family symbolism. No false reconciliation followed. The cancellation belonged to neither William nor Meghan as a triumph. It exposed how easily unresolved pain could be weaponized. Yet by admitting their separate failures, they stopped manipulation from defining the crown's future. The gala ended before it began, but in the silence it left behind, the crown finally learned that authority without trust can close every door, and still leave the monarchy dangerously exposed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.